Hi, friends. I'm Heather Miller, CEO and founder of social impact startup Grasshopper, talent acquisition and DEI specialist, mom of 2 humans and 3 fur babies, most under 4, former professional ballet and hip hop dancer, yoga teacher, interior designer, caregiver, provider, retirement planner, innovator, social connector, and the list goes on. As you can tell from my bio, I've always taken drive to the extreme, and for the most part, done pretty well juggling all of my hats. However, I say this on behalf of most of us, the past 3 years have been very challenging. My personal experience included moving to an unknown city, the unexpected death of my mother, and the birth of my first child 2 weeks later, launching a startup during maternity leave, the pandemic, building diversity strategies for a global corporation in the wake of George Floyd's death, another baby, and then, the icing on the cake, a layoff. I felt like I was approaching a midlife crisis with no space to do so. As a result, I've been thinking about balance and whether that's actually a thing. Join me as I speak with some amazing thought leaders and women in my life to understand how they keep the fire going and the lights on while staying sane. We'll explore drive, juggling priorities, taking no prisoners with your schedule, love and sickness, pursuing your dreams, enjoying the journey, and figuring out what is right for you. We hope these conversations help you err on the side of midlife epiphany versus midlife crisis. Welcome to Balanceness. Matt, welcome to Balanceness.
Hi, how are
Happy
you?
Sunday. Good. How are you?
Very good. Fresh off my brother's 30th birthday party in my hotel for the week in Toronto, as I'm here for some work and see my friends and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my
So
gosh, I didn't realize it was his 30th. That's a big milestone.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, he's the youngest in the family. I'm middle. I have an older sister, 1 year older than me. She's also in Toronto as well, although she's in Florida with the kiddies right now. So my parents came down as well, and they're just like, the little kitty, the once 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kind of guy is now turning 30, or I guess he is 30, fresh off this morning at midnight. Now that I think of it, I'm an early bird, so I left early. I left at like 11:45. That was really stupid. I should have stayed till 12, but anyways, I just realized that. Yeah.
To
I
actually officially chime in for the birthday. It was officially his birthday last night.
yeah. I should have stayed till midnight. Now I'm thinking about it. I just wanted to get my logo of my run club on this video for the
Oh my
record. Yeah,
gosh,
Unwind as well.
cool.
Give a little shout out to them.
Oh, I love
Up
that.
tempo. It's a unwind on Friday morning. So
I
yeah.
know.
Well,
I want to
no.
hear more about that too. Well, thank you for getting up so early and the time change. I don't even realize, I don't even know if we rolled forward or back, um, but thanks for joining us. Just for everyone who is listening, I always start with how my guest and I know each other. And so Matt and I are working together at a professional development startup. And I mean, obviously we have a lot in common, but 2 things were, impossibly polite and kind Canadians, and we also really like coffee.
Yeah, I'm in a place called Yorkville in Toronto, which is like way
Oh
too
yeah.
fancy for me. I stick at like a Thor like a sort a Thor sum over here with the way I dress and the way I act. But I went to a delicious coffee spot this morning, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It is, I appreciate the thanking me for getting up this morning, but I'm an early bird. If we do a podcast at 9, 10 p.m. at night, like I can't handle that. 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning is my sweet spot. So I'm fresh off my coffee, a morning walk, and this is prime time for me, to be quite honest. Like 10 o'clock is like my time zone. So we're good to go.
I'm getting there as I get older and have kids. The kids are waking up early. I'm getting there. I'm starting to like really appreciate the morning hours where it's like, you know, peaceful, it's calm. I love it. Well, Matt, can you introduce yourself to everyone? And since we're talking about balanceness, like all parts of you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we'll dive into like the real foundations of me as we go along here, but I feel like maybe people know exactly how to introduce themselves. And I feel like I did in my 20s when things were a bit more clear cut, and I was thinking about how I would have introduced them then. the long story short, I think I'm still figuring out how to introduce myself. I'm still trying to see like different parts of me. We call ourselves different things, but with you, I'm an account executive, membership consultant. There's that aspect. So that's my professional life. In my past life, it was more as a trainer and gym owner. I still sort of see myself as a fitness geek. Anything fitness, I'm excited about. I like to write. I like to read. Outside of work, my favorite things are always writing and reading. I just love reading biographies, history books. I spend my Fridays and Saturdays oftentimes just going to the library or the bookshop that no one will realize about me, just reading. I love reading. So I would say introduce myself. I'm Matthew, Montreal, Quebec, Canada, lead membership consultant at Sidebar, which would be like the way I introduce myself there. Outside of that, absolute fitness geek. Fitness helps me keep my head on my shoulders and sane. And when I want to get introverted and when I want to, take care of my spirit in other ways, I love reading, I love writing, and I love coffee. So outside of work, I would say fitness geek, reader and writer, and lover of coffee. And I like people. I like helping people. I like being there to support them and help them do whatever they can, kind of thing. So I hope
Love
that's a
it.
good introduction.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's
Oh,
totally
and I'm
us.
addicted to bubbly, like
Oh,
so a lover of bubbly as well.
my kids call it sparkly water.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, cool. We're talking about balance. So wondering what that means for you. It's different for everyone, so I want to hear.
Once again, something like I thought about a lot yesterday as you mentioned a few of the topics we may cover. I think I'm still learning what balance is, to be quite honest. I thought balance is being able to like handle everything or fill up your cup in different areas, which is probably what it is. The way I'm starting to realize balance is, I'm not sure if this will make sense, is like there's different seasons in your lives for different things, right? So there's a part of my life where it was entrepreneurship based past couple of years, even though I was in the fitness world before, and became a lot more about like taking time for myself, to read, write again, to run, teach myself to run, bike, and swim. So that was like a season for that, and now it's back in like startup life. And if you want to work hard there, I'm also realizing that balance is like, okay, you put your energy there, you give it all you got, but then you got to pull yourself out as well and find balance in other areas of your life. Relationships, hobbies, things that excite you and fill up your cup. So what does balance mean to me? I don't I think when I first heard it, when I first started trying to find balance after like burning out after my first business, I thought like, okay, I'm gonna be the most perfect balancer. I'm gonna find complete balance and complete mindfulness. I don't know if that's really possible, and that's maybe just another like hardworking obsession I have again, trying to find perfect there. I think balance is there's different seasons in your lives for different things, and you try and nurture them at different times. And I mean, Jeff Bezos does say it's like harmony, right? Like there's never complete balance, but you try and have some harmonic relationship between your love for fitness or your love for coffee, relationships and work, and try and fill up space for all of them and not get too ingrained necessarily in just one for too long. So I hope that
I like that.
answers your question.
I like harmony. I've never really thought about it that way, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like you're on different pitches, and if that's, I mean, technically I'm not a musician, but you're in different pitches and in different places, but they all flow together. I really like that. That
Yeah, it was Jeff
that
Bezos who says it's very hard to have work-life balance, but he tries to like, I'm not sure if he's right about this, like, and it's, whatever.
yeah,
Like he says like it's about work-life harmony, right? Like
yeah,
trying to have like your work actually flow into the rest of your life.
yeah.
Where after a hard day of work, you're excited to go work out, or you're excited to go see your family and things within that realm. So yeah, I'm sort of just like
Oh,
verbalizing this on the spot, but balance I find is sometimes hard to achieve, but if you accept there's like something seasons to it, or there's like harmony and there's like a flow to it, I think that takes off some of the pressure of trying to balance all
yeah.
the things, like because there's so much is always happening throughout the day.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of this podcast is like a really like an inquiry into balance. Like, does it exist? I don't know. And from my background, if you read the podcast description, like I've often gone to really extreme places in my life and sort of, fallen off the edge or the cliff, and then it's like trying to find balance again. So for me, what I love about this podcast is hearing everybody's definitions and how they try to achieve some sort of harmony or
Well,
like a healthy stasis in their life.
yeah, what I was thinking is I find for me, and we could dive into this more, it's like balance is just very hard for me to achieve, like just very,
Yeah.
very hard. What I do want to try and get better at, and as a practice, is just know when your limit is to come back to some stasis. I don't think you'll ever be able to have like this perfect symmetry of all different parts of my life. I'm too much of I don't know, too much of an over go-getter, too much of a hard worker, too much of like I have to go save the world tomorrow kind of thing. What I'm trying to do, and like the thesis of where I'm trying to go with my life right now, is just know where my limit is. And there's a podcast I love also called Founders by this guy David Senra, my favorite podcast right now. He studies great entrepreneurs and also people like Winston Churchill, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. And the idea is we try and learn from them about hard work, but he articulates nice. It's like, okay, but we also want to learn from them like when to stop, right? Like when these guys went too far or too much. So I'm always just trying to find what my limit is and then know to stop revving the engine, turn off, and then come back to it and adapt properly. That's what I guess balance really means to me, knowing where to go, how hard I can push, but then stopping the workout or stopping the hard work or stopping X, Y, and Z once I've sort of reached that like red line as you have in the car. That's what I was thinking about really yesterday, knowing when
Yeah, I
like
like that.
to pull back.
In the consulting world, we used to call it like 80-20, right? Like how exactly as you said, like how far to go. Like it never needs to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. So the other percent of the time, just kind of drop it. In mindfulness, you kind of talk about like thought dropping. So like just drop it, drop the thought, drop the practice, and move on. Otherwise you could get stuck in a hamster wheel trying to achieve perfection. But I want to talk more about you and fitness, which you've alluded to. So I'm just curious about the early Matt. Like, when did you become obsessed with fitness?
Yeah, actually, on my drive down to Toronto yesterday, I hitched a ride with my parents. I was talking to my mom about my hyperactivity and like what it was like when I was growing up. I grew up with like a ball in my hand, essentially, like whether a hockey puck, a basketball, a baseball. Like I was just a very hyperactive kid who always needed to go play sports and do everything, and that really like became this integral part of my childhood, adulthood. I think fitness became even a bigger part of my life in high school. School was infinitely tough for me. It was hard for me to sit still, hard for me to focus, but you allowed me to go play basketball during lunch. I would come back refreshed. And one of the things that I get like annoyed with school was like I went to a pretty it's a great school, but like very, what do you call it? Like, a bit more rigorous on academics than on play and movement. I just wish I had more space to move. I find when I'm able to move like an hour or two a day, I'm able to then hyper focus, ironically, on sitting still and focusing on one thing. Like if I train or move a lot during the day, I can then just sit there and plow through books and just have this extreme focus. So childhood, I was always with a ball in my hand. High school, it really helped me like through a tough time in school where I would go play basketball before or after lunch, and I even got kicked out of the gym at school for life because I was sort of skipping class a tad to go play a bit too much sports. But, my dad was talking to the teacher once. He goes, well, that's a bit healthier than what I used to do growing up at lunchtime or other people. And I appreciated that. And then I think when it became a bit more of an obsession, though, was so I was thinking about this once again yesterday. You made me become very I thought about stuff as we were talking about what themes we would go over today. So I forget the exact word, but introspective.
Self-reflective, maybe
Yeah,
introspective.
yeah. So yeah, childhood always with the ball in my hand. High school was just there to save me when school was just like too much. But I grew a lot in grade 11 or whatever, and I was like tall and skinny, and I was like the nice kid. I actually won like nicest kid in my high school in grade 11, which was cool. But I didn't like it. I wanted to be the tough kid, right? So when in grade 11, like 16, 17, and eventually 18 years old, I started getting much more like like militaristic with my fitness. So I met this great trainer, started training with him, and everything was like, yes, sir, no, sir. I would just do everything he told me. I'd wake up at whatever time, go work out. I started reading like Navy SEALs books. Everything became about like toughening myself up. And that's when I think I started having this too much of this obsession with it, where the story I wanted to relate to you was I tried out for like a pretty high level basketball team around this time, right before I got very much into it. And I remember like quitting on like the third practice or something like that because it was just becoming too hard. And after I quit on the drill, I went home and reflected, and I noted to myself, I'm never ever quitting on anything ever again. And that I think was like a seminal moment in my life where I went from this tall, skinny, insecure kid to I'm never quitting. And that's caused like pros and cons in my life where I just can't quit certain things. I'm just way too stubborn. But it also allows me to do like some cool things by not quitting and not giving up. But childhood, ball in my hand, adulthood, high school was, helped me really like focus during school. In university and into my young 20s, early 20s, it became a bit more militaristic. Lots of discipline, lots of focus, but maybe too much discipline and too much focus. And, sometimes you have to know when to quit or when to, live to fight another day. So that's sort of my trajectory with fitness.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the like hyperactivity and the let's say the balance that working out or fitness or just being active gives you. I think I was very much, a lot of people are that way. I was very much that way as well. I actually went to a ballet school, the National Ballet School in Toronto, and that's where I grew up. So it was actually the most ideal place for kids who like needed those outlets, because it was like, math at 8 o'clock, ballet at 9, English at 10, Pilates at 11. So for me, I just really enjoyed that. And then pivoting into a corporate world was pretty tough for me. I definitely have spent a lot of my life like struggling to figure out the balance of like sitting down at a laptop, and where you can find those outlets. So thank you for mentioning that. You started your first entrepreneurial venture pretty young. I think it was called Blackout Fitness. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just pretty enamored by this story. I mean, how did you have the courage to start such a big venture so young? And when I say big venture, like you tell me what Blackout Fitness was, but I imagine anything where you have to think about like renting a space and gym equipment and, bringing on clients. I think that's a big piece of meat to bite off for like a young, and I'll call you kid, air quote kid. But yeah, just want to hear about that.
Yeah, I'll give you some context there. It was an entrepreneurial venture, but it really was my like ex-business partner's gym. I became like a big part of it, maybe sort of the face and the manager and the trainer there. But when I was leaving university, I had sort of two options. I was doing my LSATs and I was getting ready for law school kind of thing. And then I got like accepted into a couple and got certifications into a couple. But at the same time, this individual came to me. He's like, I'm opening up a gym. And at that time, I was training people. I had managed a coffee shop. So I sort of had these two qualities. I was just a hard worker, and I think I was a good person. So I jumped to the opportunity. I remember like talking to my mom, like, do I do this or do that? Like, give it a shot for a year kind of thing instead of law school. Like, I never saw myself sitting still, also like, how was I going to get through law school? This hyperactive guy. So
It was the worst. Speaking from experience,
yeah,
I'm glad you chose this route.
I go through my during the hardest days of getting to the pandemic where I question a lot of things. I'm like, maybe I should have chosen that route, but I do think I have like the entrepreneurial fire in me, and I don't like sitting still, and I have to be creative and move. And my closest friend right now, he went to law school as well. He's like, no, dude, you're on the right path, kind of thing. But there was a lot of questioning where maybe I just screwed the hell up, because it's nice to have this law degree in the back pocket versus this like entrepreneurial, when I was applying to jobs a couple of years ago, like as much as I had this amazing success in my early 20s, when you see the resume, you're not really from Montreal, the gym community, you don't really know what it is, kind of thing. So it was a lot of questioning, but yeah, so he was a couple years older than me, came from like a very well-known Quebec family, unbelievably entrepreneur, unbelievably determined. I just jumped to the opportunity, like, let's give it a shot. And I think what got me through that, it was a massive gym. It was 14,000 square feet. He took care of the equipment. I helped move it all in with him. And then we just worked. For the first 2 years, we worked 100 hours a week. Every single week. I was 22. I had all the energy in the world. I was just telling someone this morning, but I was up at 4:30 every day for 2-3 years straight. Worked weekends. The first couple of years is like I didn't mind. I was young and ambitious, and hard work was getting me places. I was meeting people I never dreamed of meeting. It was crazy. So I trained people there. I helped hire and train the other trainers. I got certified by multiple different training certifications. I cleaned the gym, I cleaned the toilets, I cleaned the showers, I opened the gym, I closed the gym. I was there for my employees. I did absolutely everything except for some like the back and admin stuff and paying the bills, essentially. Half entrepreneurial thing, half just like this massive big part of this gym that became like the talk of the city, or the talk of, we were in a place called Griffintown in Montreal, which is I compare it to Williamsburg of New York, for people who don't know. So before this place was anything, he had the knowledge to open up a spot there. And we just became like the talk of the town. And I became a Lululemon ambassador at like 23. They took me to Whistler. Like I was on top of the world. I was, with awesome people all day. I was training people. I was working my bum off. I was a Lululemon ambassador. And then by like year 3 and 4, I was just completely burning out. I didn't have a life outside work. I was training. I would train people from 6 o'clock in the morning to like 1 o'clock. I would maybe work out, and then I worked till 9 o'clock. And that was for like 6-7 days a week. And I would like give it my all also. So yeah, crazy time in my life. That was 4 or 5 years. And then eventually I decided to leave. But very proud of like the work I did there, and the entrepreneurial spirit, and just like the ability just to adapt and work and be there. I was really there for a lot of people in my 20s, which weighed on me eventually at the end. But I was like, I was there for my colleagues and my employees and our members, and it was just a lot at such a young age, I find.
That's really cool though, that's the one thing as you were talking that really stood out for me, that you articulated, like being there as a manager. That's so important, and not many young people get that experience. Like think about if you were in, you were climbing the corporate ladder. Like you definitely, sure, there could have been some mentorship, but this seems like, on a different level. And what a great skill to have as are a little bit older now. And this is probably when you start thinking about not being an individual contributor and managing people. Like you've got that in the bag now.
I have thought about that. I mean, I love management. I love leadership. I think I
Yeah.
had actually, ironically, a lot of individual contributor skills to improve on, because unless you're going to be a trainer, I needed to get more of a skill set underneath that. But I have the skill set, I think, of managing and working with colleagues, and I think at the highest level, just knowing how tough entrepreneurship can be, and like knowing like what it feels like to have an employee call you in the morning and tell you that they just can't make it to work. I once had an employee tell me I can't make it to work because his car's not working. I'm like, well, there's a bus. And like, to me, that was so foreign. It's like, I probably took it too far, because what I realized, it's like, it was my baby. So I was going to do everything, but other people didn't care as much as me. So that was a great lesson in terms of an employer-employee relationship. And my mom, I come from an entrepreneurial like family. Like my grandma, my bubby, owned a very famous dish store in Montreal, like very famous. And my dad owns a toy store in Montreal. So there was always this like retail entrepreneurial like vibe in my family. And I always felt comfortable in there, because I think a lot of entrepreneurship is just working hard. Like I grew up
Yeah.
like on some weekends I go to my grandma's store and just like pack boxes. I just felt at home there with other people working their bums off packing boxes. I'm like, well, just this is just work. You just work hard and usually have success. So coming back to like Blackout, and I forget sort of my point now, which
No, but I think you were about to transition into like you pivoted. So I think next step was building out Hudson Avenue, which was
Yep.
your own gym. Yeah.
So I left Blackout after 4 or 5 years. I was pretty spent. I took a month or two off. I traveled to for a week in like the West Coast with my brother, which was awesome. He was just starting grad school. I was taking finally time off work. I was so tired. I was just like sleep 16 hours a day. It was the craziest thing. So we traveled to like Calgary to go see a mentor of mine, and then we did the mountains up in Alberta, Kelowna, Vancouver, and then I made my way to SF, San Francisco. And I just became inspired by, I'm like, I felt at home there with other these ambitious entrepreneurs where I'm like, oh, I'm not so weird. There's other people who are like just as driven and ambitious as me and just amazing people. So did that month or two. I came back to Montreal eventually with the idea to open a gym called Hudson Avenue. The gym was named after my cousin's street in San Francisco. And I was very inspired there. And the idea was to be like a place where people can just move better, and there's supposed to be more play. Like it was like I think the original thing was Hudson Avenue, like a neighborhood of play. I was even trying to get into that whole sense of like fitness should be fun and you should be around individuals. And there was a tech component as well, where the idea was most of fitness, I think like injuries really come from just too much load and intensity versus poor technique. So I really wanted to track people's progress. So I eventually signed a lease to open up a very, very small gym, which was going to like double as sort of a lab for this app. So I would train people by day, and I started trying to build this app by night that would track people's progress. So people would come to the gym, I would do their assessment, sort of like the onboarding we do at work, and I would then quantify all the results throughout the workout. And then I was able to show like their progress on these cool graphs on Excel. I was able to show them how they compared to other members. And all with the idea of like, like if you train too much, it's going to increase your risk for injury. Here's the amount of load. Here's the progress. Sort of like trying was to like make it seem like a Whoop or a Garmin and tracking people's progress. But in the end, I was just like, and you'll ask me some questions. It was like just trying to do too much. I was training people again all day. I was trying to build an app on the side. Like I'm like trying to do too much. So that was the Hudson journey.
There's something really interesting about I think what we are capable of as humans, like what we can handle and versus what a business can handle. And what I've found personally, and we can get into, my journey with entrepreneurship another time, but with business, I think you need extreme focus. And I don't mean like energy focus. I mean like the most minimal viable product ever, like the most simplified version of what you're trying to achieve, and you start with that, and everything needs to come back to that, and eventually it builds. So I've definitely been in a place where I've tried to bite off too much and tried to do everything with a business. And I think with business, it just needs to be extremely, extremely focused.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I came from this big gym where I didn't really know any difference. I'm like, okay, I'll just and I thought I was a successful entrepreneur there, but it was really like, it was really my ex-business partner's gym, and like his money and like, it was my success was, I think, propped up a lot more that we had fancy equipment in a great area. So it's like, it wasn't like, I don't know if it was true entrepreneurship. So when I had my second gym, that was more, I would say, true entrepreneurship. And I mean, people don't like when I say this, but like I probably fucked up. Like I just took on way too much. Even though it was like a small, cheap gym, and I wasn't paying crazy bills. It's like I was all over the place. I didn't know how to really build a business. And you say MVP, I'm thinking about like maybe an MVI. Like it's a minimal viable idea. Like most businesses start or can start or should start as a podcast, a blog, a group chat. My cousin, who's a well-known entrepreneur, talks about that. Like the idea was if I can go back and do it again, it's like go get a spot in someone else's gym, pay rent, not be tied to anything, go start a blog, write more, put on a group chat, get people and track their progress somehow, and just like cheaply screw up. I was tied to this rent. I don't know how to build an app. I just taught myself the code because I'm just way too hard of a worker. So it was the hardest thing eventually letting it go, but I didn't know what I was doing. I had I wasn't even in the real world probably, as I think back to it. I had some money put away, so I was able to afford the gym. I had my clients for my first gym, which helped me, and I made a difference in their lives. But if you want to be a true entrepreneur, you really have to get scrappy and go get beat up a bit differently,
Yeah.
versus, yeah. I think
Yeah.
about that stuff a lot.
Oh, so do I. So do I. Hindsight 2020, right? Well, I think you pivoted after that. Was it because of the pandemic, or is it because you realized like the business focus was too broad?
Yeah, this is the meaty part of the story. It's probably both, actually. Without the pandemic, maybe I'm still spinning my wheels and going in circles because I just don't quit, right? Which is a flaw in itself, probably, and one thing I have to get better at if you want to be an entrepreneur. I think they always say you got to know when to fire yourself, kind of thing, and move on from certain things. I think the gym was like I was training people making like okay money or is on the track. I was supposed to have the busiest week of the gym, the week the pandemic started. But even then, like the rent was increasing, training prices weren't going higher. It's a very tough lifestyle things training, because it's a very unregulated industry. It's not like being a dentist and there's like a cap and all that kind of stuff. And the app was going to go nowhere because I had no clue what I was doing, and I just bit off too much more than I can chew, and there wasn't really an MVI there. It's sort of an MVP, but like there was this, it wasn't good enough. So the pandemic happens, and I don't think the gym would have been a success to begin with. Maybe I'm still spinning my wheels right now. I don't know. But they sort of gave me an ultimatum, my landlords, like either sign the lease because I was up for like my third year now, or like move out because it was ending. And if I signed the lease for another year, I may have been shut for another year because I didn't know where the pandemic was going. They weren't the nicest landlords. They were kind of assholes, to be honest. So overnight, I had to decide to close the gym and move on. And that brings you to like the meaty part of the story where it's like after that happened, I was just like the most lost puppy in the world. Because it was like I think sometimes with businesses, like you're able to wind them down properly and like go through that mourning period. But it was like overnight versus like this I think over 1 to 2 years it would have happened that I would have wound this gym down. Like I probably would have signed a lease for another year, realized it's not working, maybe gone like and started like looking at other jobs or other opportunities or getting certifications. But overnight I closed my gym down, and like for the first couple of days I'm like, great, no more rent to pay. I'm gonna figure this out. I figure out everything. But then like you're running around Montreal with a mask on your face to train people to pay the bills. It's 35 degrees in the summertime, humid, and you're out of your car training people, which is the way people probably should start as a trainer. But like I had felt like, I'm like, oh, I own 2 gyms. I'm now training people out of my car, running around the city, still getting paid the same rate because that was the rate I was charging for people coming to me. And it was hard to change. Because overnight, I just like, it was absolutely insane how my life sort of like,
Wow,
yeah,
that's like such a shock. And obviously you had no time to re-strategize. That's
no,
so tough.
it was the worst thing ever, to be honest. Yeah. And that started like a whole journey of like read self-discovery the past couple of years. But like the crux of it was like a couple of weeks after that, I woke up one morning, I'm like, who am I? Like, training was going terrible during the pandemic. I wasn't even allowed to train in Montreal. I, didn't have much money anymore. Um, it sucked. Yeah, it was like, yeah, it sucked. That was my awakening moment to like maybe the real world kind of thing, like the real world where things.
I've definitely had that, yeah, identity crisis multiple times. And I think it's often when you're at a, really low point, like a point of quote unquote failure. Like for me, it was when I left ballet. I was able to salvage that, move into hip hop, um, but then force myself into law school as we just discussed. Totally a bad idea for Heather Miller, and went through another low point after that. But yeah, identity crises are
It
really
was, I spent 10 years working. Like the way I saw it was I worked from 22 to 30 nonstop. And I don't like regret it. I love work, but like, I missed out on relationships. I missed out on just remember like breaking down one night and like just made like knowing I missed out on this. Like my friends went rock climbing one night in like their mid-20s. I remember like I couldn't go rock climbing with them because one, I owned the gym, but my body was broken. And then two, I didn't have the time. And it's just like I remember literally breaking down. Like I wasn't able to go do that because I don't regret my 20s, I don't think, but like all I did was really work. And it's still things like I wrestle with a tad. I think a lot of my early 30s was trying to live again in my early 20s, kind of, or relive it, where just like I didn't want to work, to be quite honest. I was like, I just worked for 8 years straight and got nothing from it. I felt I'm going to just everyone leave me alone. There was like a moment where like a couple years I was like, everyone just like leave me alone. Like I didn't want to be around people. All I wanted to end up doing was just run, bike, and swim, and just be not around people. And I probably isolated myself way too much, but yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I feel you. I feel you. But I think you, and keep me honest here, you're very into professional development, reading, listening to podcasts. You turned to writing, right? In 2022, you started a blog, yeah?
So I've always had a bit of a writing practice, even from my first. Like I liked writing about like load and intensity, working out wise. Like I find like people just like, ironically, even though I don't like do it as well in practice, it's like we all just probably train too much, or move too much. And what really happened during that time is, yeah, I turned to writing, but I really turned to run, bike, swim. But the foundation of where I really turned my life to was I hopped on YouTube one night and I started watching like these triathlon videos or Ironman videos, and a lot of them were based upon like other people just changing their life around. And I really didn't like who I became. I just became this like workaholic, like not self-absorbed, but like everything was always based around success and work and maybe me. And I didn't know how to find balance. I'm still terrible at finding balance and all that kind of shit. But I knew I wanted to like let go and change myself. And I started running, biking, swimming. I started eating even healthier, uh, getting out of nature. So I started writing a bit more on I think became more on like leadership and growth and how to change yourself. Like I became very inspired by this guy, like, Rich Roll, and he was a
I
former
was
alcoholic.
just gonna ask if
Yeah.
that's when ritual came into your life.
Yeah, yeah, probably. I probably like not laughed at that stuff beforehand, but like, plant-based, this and that. Like, men don't do that shit. Like I wasn't a toxic masculinity, but it's just like I was like the military hard work. Like you can't show suffering and all that shit. So this guy Rich Roll came in my life. This guy John McAvoy also, I randomly picked up his book. John McAvoy was a former criminal in the UK, like the most wanted criminal in the UK, who found run, bike, swim while in jail. And those were like two books I picked up that really just changed my thinking on so much. Like, I wasn't an alcoholic and I wasn't a criminal, but like I was probably self-obsessed with work and all that kind of shit. That was my addiction. And I'm like, this is just fucking dumb, you know? And I want to be a lot more like them, much more present, be there for other people, like have space, just have like this space to be able to be kind of thing, which I still struggle with. And Rich Roll Sellers, he still struggles with also. Like and when he talks about balance, he's like, that doesn't come naturally to me, balance. He's like, I'm a very obsessive or hardworking person, but it's a practice to come back to himself. And I think that's what like balance means to me, where it's like we tend to overwork ourselves, but when we have to at least know our limit. So yeah, I think through that I started writing a lot about more change and growth. Professional development. I just love the idea that you can change. I in my 20s, I think I struggled around people who were like lazy. Like I didn't relate to people who were lazy. I think in my 30s, like I struggled not necessarily. Yeah, I struggled to relate to people who don't think you can change or you can grow or you can evolve. I've tried to do a lot of change in myself, maybe too much, to be honest. Maybe I was too tough on myself. But I like writing on change and growth. And when I'm not reading books on like fitness, I'm reading books on leadership on like Winston Churchill, Lincoln, and Brian Chesky, Barack Obama, other individuals who just like are good human beings. So yeah, I've liked I started a Substack. I've always tried to do things creative on like social media. It's never taken off for me, and that's maybe good actually. Maybe I'm not haven't been ready for it or wanted it, but I just think people can change. Like, as I'm saying it out loud, like I forget like when I spent a couple weeks ago from like work, I was just coming back to my why. And that was always my why. Like people can change and you can grow and you can let go and you can evolve. And I forget about that sometimes. Rich Roll and then John McAvoy guys where, people don't realize that.
Yeah.
People don't realize that you can like really change and evolve.
Um, so you just mentioned work, and so both you and I are on the business development sales side of a startup, and it's tough. I'm not gonna mince words. It's tough. It's very pressurized. How do you manage the stress and the idea of perfection and think about balance in this environment?
It's a great question. I think for the first couple months, like I just like put my head down and I'm like, I just don't give a shit whether this is easy or hard. I'm just gonna go do the work. Because I wanted a new challenge, I wanted a change, I wanted this job, all that kind of stuff. But then like over the past couple weeks or few weeks, it's like I feel a lot more of the pressure. And I was cracking under the pressure, I found as well. And that's when I knew like I needed new tools in my life or come back to old tools. Like the irony is, I think as I took this job, I was still trying to live a bit, maybe like two lives, like Mr. Fitness and Mr. Startup, and you can't be competitive in both. I don't think. I was trying to like eat perfectly, sleep perfectly, train perfectly, while work perfectly, and I don't think you can do any of those four. Now I'm realizing it perfect. So I came back to old tools to really help me deal with the pressure. I started meditating again. I let go of this perfect eating, sleeping, training thing. Like you can't like, like in the books, it'll be like, the best way to perform well is by eating well, training well and sleeping well. But like, this is life. I'm starting to realize, and life is fucking hard sometimes, especially in like wanky, like economies and, all that stuff. And then trying to do other things where it's like, even when you're tired, if you're not like 10 on 10 tired, you try and go fill your cup up with joy. I'm like learning that's important to like not always just go to the bookstore and read, but go see friends and hang out. So like turning to tools outside that like crazy 9 to 6, 9 to 7 grind, meditation, exercise, not being perfect, calling friends on help. I'm just really good at working hard and getting the job done, but like some of my biz dev sales skills are just still like raw. So I'm just like, what would you do in this situation? Help me here. And just like, if I want to get through the toughness, I gotta let go and ask for help, which is like the hardest thing for me, So that's been a big one. Like, just like being like, how would you guys like, Charlie Munger, one of my heroes, late Charlie Munger, like the finance guy with Buffett, the investor guy with Buffett. He always like tries to go like, invert the issue. Like, what would this look like if it was actually easy? And I'm not saying I do this all the time. I think I'm like failing most of the time at dealing with the pressure, to be quite honest. But when it does look good, it's like, what does this look like if it was easy? This is not that important sometimes in the grand scheme of life. Exercise, meditation help, like don't have too many vices. I'm not a big drinker to deal with the stress, and then ask for help. So those are a few of the things: exercise, meditation, asking for help, and just like, does this all really matter in the grand big scheme of life? Sometimes it
I
takes off
know.
some shoulders.
At McKinsey, we'd always be like, is this brain surgery? No. Okay, like let's move on.
Who says that? Your kids? Sorry.
No, in my consulting career,
Oh yeah.
that like really, again, that it comes back to the 80/20. Like, are we saving lives? So maybe there were some situations,
Yeah.
where we were saving lives, but not as often as a brain surgeon is. So yeah.
Correct.
Okay, final question for you. If you could give someone advice for building sustainability into their lives, what would you say?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question as well. I'm like, on my drive down Toronto, I was listening to that Founders podcast again, and there's an episode on Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and it talks about their work ethic, but also talks about the dark side of sustainability.
Yeah.
And I think the advice to me, or advice to other individuals, because like I find probably like a lot of people come and listen to this podcast are probably type A or workaholics, or like there's drawn to that. It's like, be kind to yourself, that's who you are, but then make it a practice that there's a way to always come back. Whether it's like who grounds you, the person that you're have a relationship with, exercise, meditation, good food, like where can you go to pull back so that you can push forward? So if you're working this 9 to 7 grind, it's like, what can you do on weekends that isn't just sleeping and just recovering? That fills up your cup and with joy. Same thing like before work, what could you do in the morning to do it? What can you even during the workday to take some pressure off your shoulders? So I'm trying to be more kind with the individual I am. Like I've come to realize I'm this hyper focused, hyper driven individual, and it has good things, but when it gets away from me, then it's not a good thing, and I burn out, and I just don't like that kind of thing. So how do I do it sustainability where it's like I know I'm going to always push a bit too hard? What do I have to recognize in myself where I'm pushing that red line too much, and what do I need to come pull me back to reality? which is always exercise, movement, laughing, good friends, seeing my family, good relationships, things within that vein.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna play a little game to end. It's called Yin or Yang, and it's kind of like a would you rather. So, in this current season of your life, solo workout or group workout?
I thought I was gonna I did a lot even though I joined all these run clubs recently, I was gonna say maybe solo because I do like some group workouts. I love my run clubs. I love people. I love being able to turn off and not think about work with them. Group workouts are amazing. I do too much stuff by myself these days, or I got too okay with doing things by myself. Run clubs are fantastic. Group workouts are great. They're really the
I
run
know.
clubs.
It just like really gets you out of your head. I was actually, in preparation for this, looking at your Instagram and like you do a lot of group challenges, I would say. I love the idea of that. All right, night out with friends or a solo night in with a book?
Solo night out with a book.
I totally knew that was going to be your answer.
I last night was like, my brother's 30th, like the best night. But like as I was running from my run back, I passed an Indigo bookstore. I'm like, if it wasn't my brother's 30th, like because that's like the whole thing with balance. Like I also have to accept who I am. I love doing things on my own. I love reading. I love working. Like I am that person. But like, and you should have these nights out with friends, like your brother's 30th. But man, when I passed that Indigo bookstore and I saw a few new books on the shelf, I'm like, I could just spend all night here and read all of them. I love reading. Charlie Munger also says like make friends with the eminent dead. Like all the answers in life are in those books, on these biographies. So yeah, I too much though sometimes, because then you can isolate yourself by not being in reality, because books aren't always reality. They may have the answers in them, but you have to actually go and practice the answers in real life.
It's so true. It's so true. Okay, final question. Espresso or Americano?
Yeah, espresso. Yeah. Cappuccino would be the answer.
A cappuccino. I was gonna say cappuccino, but I wasn't sure if you were like a milk guy or not.
Yeah, no, I start off like with a couple shots in the morning, and then I have like one cappuccino in the afternoon, something like that. Not too much Americano. I like the cappuccinos. Yeah.
Me too. I just finished my iced cappuccino throughout this podcast. Well, thank you so much again, and thanks for I know you were up, but putting in the energy on a Sunday, on an off day. So appreciate all your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow.
Of course.
Bye.
Thank you for supporting another episode of Grasshopper's Balanceness podcast. If you liked it, please rate, review, and subscribe on our Apple and Spotify pages. Send me a screenshot at hello@grasshopper.com. That's GRASSHOPPHER to enter yourself into this episode's surprise raffle. And be the first to hear about upcoming episodes and events by signing up for Grasshopper's newsletter, which can be found on our website. Happy balancing until the next time.